it can be a good thing. It can be a bad thing. Um, a lot of people have come together in the recovery world in social media and really can inspire each other and provide a lot of resources for one another, and create safe spaces to talk. However, there are those who use social media, and this is on another end of the continuum, but almost to show like how to have an eating disorder. And they give ideas about how to have eating disorders, how to lose weight,
I
posting
see.
really not the greatest pictures for others to start comparing themselves to. So it can be a really dangerous place. However, it can also be a really informative place.
I see. I see. That's interesting. Um, so do you feel that people who are actively struggling with an eating disorder are more likely to put content up there that might trigger other people, or just trying to explore this a little bit further?
Yeah, I think that those actively engaging in an eating disorder, if they're actively engaging and they're sorry, there's my
No,
dog.
no, the
If,
other
and
reminds me of mine.
if there are those who are actively engaging who are also wanting help simultaneously, so they may be kind of dabbling in the recovery, social media kind of stuff. So it's not to say that all people with eating disorders are engaging in that.
I
However, I will say people engaging in eating disorders do tend to use social media to do a lot of comparison of self,
I
which is
see, I see.
dangerous.
Yeah, it feels like body image is so different now from, like, when I was a kid. I mean, I'm just old enough to remember what it was like before social media, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah,
And it's just kind of amazing because you can't help but compare yourself to the friend that you see or whoever you think to be your peer.
that's right. That's right.
It's interesting. I noticed that.
And also, like, comparing yourself to others is not an all bad thing, right? Because it can help us strive for things that we want, it can help us be better. However, those with eating disorders, it can be very dangerous.
Sure.
So, yeah.
It kind of reminds me of one of the clients that I do webcasts for is specific to addiction recovery services, and I noticed so much of the language that you guys use at least sounds to my biased ear a whole lot like addiction recovery.
Mhm.
Is that coincidence, or is it is there sort of a similar mindset?
There is a similar mindset. A lot of people who suffer from eating disorders also suffer from other types of addictions, or co-occurring mental disorders such as depression or anxiety, or bipolar disorder. There is an overlap. However, there is a difference in the recovery. Obviously, substances you can be abstinent from, food you cannot.
That's the thing of it, isn't it? Because
Right, right.
most things, if you realize it's not good for you, you can just kind of cut it out of your life, but not that.
Right, right. However, as I'm sure you know, you've worked in the field, recovery from substances and alcohol is so much more than abstinence, right?
Yes,
It's
absolutely.
about learning to live a whole different way, to think a different way, to learn how to deal with your emotions differently. So,
In all our affairs,
right,
exactly. Yeah.
exactly.
Um, let's see here. That's a good segue to pretty much the last thing I wanted to talk about, which was it when I was speaking to a different expert in the field of eating disorders, she mentioned to me that the biggest thing she would like for the public to be more aware of is that um, deaths caused by anorexia.
Parts that are so difficult to talk about,
Yeah,
right? But the
exactly.
parts that so needed to be talked about. Well,
Yes.
first off, I will say, like with suicide, those who are really, really depressed are not usually the ones you see kill themselves. They are the ones when their depression begins to lift a little bit and they have a tendency to be impulsive. Those are people who are at higher risk of suicide in the first place. With anorexia, there's so many things going on, like cognitive impairment. When you're suffering from malnutrition and your brain is deprived of things, you're not functioning from your frontal lobe, your frontal cortex, which helps you plan and organize and make decisions more rationally. So you're functioning more from your limbic, which is like more primal, more in survival mode, more from emotions. So it's dangerous, right? Because people with suffering from anorexia aren't functioning from the part of their brain where they're able to be totally rational.
The part that's hard to you can't really teach that front brain. I think I see it's sort of that reptile brain instead.
That's right. That's right. That's what when the brain is, not is malnutritioned.
Mm.
That's what happens. Yeah, you shut down that and frontal cortex, and same thing with addiction.
Mhm, mhm. Very interesting. Well, this is already a whole lot of really good stuff. What would you guys like to talk about? What's important to you in the field?
Um, eating. I'm a woman who's in my own recovery. I struggled with an eating disorder for 15 years, and now I'm a certified eating disorder specialist. So I know how scary it is. I know how scary it is to ask for help, and I know how scary it is to step into recovery. But you're never ever alone if you don't want to be. You are if you want to be and choose to be, but there are always people out there who can help you. You just have to know who to go to, and who to ask for help. And I want people to know that recovery is wonderful. It is so gratifying. Living in an eating disorder is so imprisoning. It's such an insidious disease. You become so selfish, and you're usually these types of people are very selfless people.
Mm,
So you're going so against the grain of your authenticity, which also can like lead to further depression, hence feeds the cycle. So there's a lot of education to be done still, and there's so many who are doing it, which is so wonderful. Um, but to know how scary it is, but know if you go to the right people and ask for help, it's there.